Let's take a look at the next page on the review. In question 23, we're asked to multiply. We have a binomial times a trinomial, so I need to distribute the 4x in first. 4x times 3x squared would give us a 12x cubed. 4x times negative 6x would give us a negative 24x squared. And then 4x times 5 would give us 20x. I'm now going to repeat by distributing the negative 3 into that second parenthesis. Negative 3 times 3x squared will give us a negative 9x squared. Negative 3 times negative 6x will give us a positive 18x. And then negative 3 times positive 5 will give us a negative 15. Once we distribute, we should try to go ahead and collect our like terms. We have a 2x cubed. The negative 24x squared and the negative 9x squared will combine to give negative 33x squared. The 20x and the 18x will combine to give 38x. And then we just have one constant term of negative 15. In question 24, it's a division problem. Notice that here we're only dividing by a monomial, so I can split apart the numerator. I can rewrite this as 15a cubed b squared divided by 5a squared b squared minus 10a squared b cubed over 5a squared b squared. For the first term, 5 goes into 15 3 times. The a squared will cancel with 2 powers of a in the numerator, so we'll still have 1 power of a left. And then both of the b squareds cancel. So I'm simply left with 3a over 1, which is just 3a. For the second term, 5 goes into 10 twice. Both powers of a cancel, so the a squared on the top cancels with the a squared on the bottom. I can cancel 2 powers of b in the bottom with 2 powers of b up top, but I'll still have 1 power of b left over. So final answer should be just 3a minus 2b. In the next batch of questions, we now move on to our factoring. 25 highlights the fact that no matter what method you're going to use, you should always begin by looking to see if your terms have a GCF, or greatest common factor. Here, the greatest common factor is going to be 2x, y, z. So I'm going to factor a 2x, y, z out of both of these terms. Notice in the beginning, if we started with 2 terms, then our parentheses should also contain 2 terms as well. 2 goes into 14 7 times. I factored out all of the x, y, and z variables, so I just have a 7 there. 2 goes into 16 8 times. I started with an x squared, but if I'm pulling out 1 power of x, that means I'll still have 1 power of x left on the inside. Similarly, I had 2 powers of y. If you're pulling 1 to the outside, you'll still have 1 power of y left with this. And then you pulled out the z that was with it. And so that should be your final answer. 2xyz times the quantity 7 minus 8xy. If you're unsure of yourself, you can always redistribute it to check your answer, but that is correct. Take a look at 26. Here it looks like there might be a GCF, but there's really nothing common to all 4 of those other than 1. But because we do have 4 terms, the method we want to employ is factor by grouping. To do that, I group the first 2 terms together, and I also group the last 2 terms together. After your grouping, you should factor out the GCF within each parenthesis. The first parenthesis, both terms have an x in them, so I factor that and I get an a plus b. In the next parenthesis, the terms don't share anything other than 1, but also because the first term is a negative, we should factor out a negative 1 from that parenthesis. That'll leave us with an a plus b. It changes both signs. And with the factor by grouping, you know you're going in the right direction if after you do the GCF, the 2 parentheses should contain the same quantity. So I have an a plus b on this first term. I also have an a plus b on the second term. So that makes that term common so you can factor it out. If I factor out the a plus b from the first term, what I'm left with is an x. And when I factor it out from the second term, I'm left with a minus 1. And that's going to be our factorization. A plus b times x minus 1. In number 27, this is a difference of squares. This looks like b squared minus 8 squared. So it's going to be a double parenthesis. The first term in each parenthesis is what you square to get the first number. The last term in each parenthesis is what you square to get that last number. And with the difference of squares, the signs are always 1 plus with 1 minus. Doesn't matter which one you put first, but your factorization should have a b plus 8 term as well as a b minus 8 term. 28 is similar. This is yet another difference of squares. What we would have to square to get 36x squared would be a 6x. So that starts each parenthesis. The thing we would have to square to get 25y squared would be a 5y. So each one ends in a 5y. And with the difference of squares, the signs are always 1 plus and 1 minus.